My story begins in the late 1980s and, as of July 2015, has yet to reach its end. I was born in 1984 in Washington, D.C. At the time, my father was a career Army Sergeant First Class, and my mother worked as a banker. I also have a sister who's 12 years older than me. Now, my story involves some looking back, starting from my birth. According to my family, we've experienced multiple paranormal events. Some were intriguing and harmless, while others were far less so. From what they've told me, nothing strange had ever happened before I came along. It all seemed to start with me. From what I can recall, we lived in a big two-story house pretty close to Fort Meade, where my dad worked. I can still picture it. White with brown brick, a concrete staircase leading up to the front door, and a two-car garage. When you walked through the front door, straight ahead were stairs that went up to the kitchen and a hallway leading to the bedrooms. To the right of the door was the family room, which opened into a larger living room. From there, you could get to the backyard or the garage. I don't know how long my family had lived there before I was born, but this part of my story starts with my own memories and what my sister told me years after the first incident. One night, when my sister was 16 and babysitting me, I was 4. She was watching the Arsenio Hall show while I played with my toys. We were in the family room, home alone. I don't know the exact time, but it must have been pretty late. From what I remember, my sister and I heard a noise coming from upstairs. She told me to stay downstairs and keep playing, say it was probably nothing. But being me, I followed her anyway. When we got to the top of the stairs, the kitchen and hallway were pitch black, except for a faint light filtering in from a neighbor's house. My sister kept hearing sounds coming from the direction of the bedrooms. I remember her standing completely still, with me right behind her. I tried to peek around, but she wouldn't let me. I'm not sure how long we stood there. My sister says it was maybe 5 to 7 seconds, staring down the hallway toward the bedrooms. Then, all of a sudden, we heard loud, rapid footsteps running toward the bedrooms, and the door at the end of the hall slammed shut. I didn't see anyone. My sister grabbed me, threw me over her shoulder, and we bolted outside. We stayed out there until my parents got home just minutes later. She told my dad what happened, and I remember him checking the house while my mom, my sister, and I waited outside. A while later, he came back out and said everything was fine. Nothing was out of place. No windows were open or tampered with. Nothing was stolen. I was too young to question it, so we left it at that. Not long after, we packed up and moved to San Antonio, Texas. My dad had been transferred to Fort Sam Houston. My parents were originally from Texas, so it was a blessing for them to return to a place they knew and loved. This next incident comes from my dad's perspective. It happened when he was alone. The rest of us were already in San Antonio. My mom used to tell my sister and me about the gremlins in our house. She'd say they'd take little things, keys, shoes, paperwork, small but important stuff, only to return them at the very last second. It made us laugh, and I remember my dad saying things like, "Well, I'd love to see one of those gremlins." He was packing up the last of our stuff into a truck to drive to Texas. It was getting late, so he decided to sleep and leave at first light. He slept in the same room where my sister and I had been during that first incident. Exhausted, he fell asleep almost instantly. Around 2 a.m., he woke up to the sound of someone walking upstairs. He shot awake, thinking someone had broken in, maybe assuming the house was empty. He said it started as careful footsteps, like someone walking slowly and calmly. My dad just lay there on the floor listening. Let me make this clear. My dad was a career soldier. Nothing scared him, and he could take down a man with his bare hands. But he told me he wished it had been a man that night. As he kept listening, the steps got louder and faster. After a few minutes, he started hearing childlike, garbled laughter, almost watery sounding. He could feel the vibrations of running footsteps right above him, from the bedrooms to the kitchen area. My dad, who feared no man or beast, was absolutely terrified. He grabbed his blanket and pillow and left earlier than planned. Looking back, he laughs about it now, but he doesn't deny it scared the hell out of him. In San Antonio, we lived in a house near the international airport. Things were mostly normal that year, but there was one incident, my first real experience. I was in pre-K, so I must have been about 5. I used to sleep in my parents' bed, even though I had my own room. It felt safe and comfortable. Their room was huge, with a row of big glass windows and a glass door leading to the backyard. They always kept the blinds open at night to let the moonlight in. In the middle of the backyard stood a tall tree, so tall no one could reach the branches. The bed was maybe 10 feet or so from the windows. One night, I woke up randomly. It must have been late because it was pitch dark with a bluish-white glow, the way it looks when the moon's bright. I sat up. My parents were fast asleep. Looking out the window, I saw a glowing bluish-white figure with its arms stretched out, forming a T-shape. It had long, shoulder-length hair and looked like it was wearing pants. It was facing sideways, staring at the tree, not moving. I watched it for maybe 10 or 15 seconds without blinking. I was drawn to it, almost like it was beautiful in a way. I wasn't scared, probably because I didn't know what it was. I looked down at my mom and tried to wake her so she could see it, since she was closer to the window. When I looked back, the figure was now facing me and closer to the glass. A sharp chill ran down my spine. I started shaking, unsure what I was feeling. I didn't know what a ghost was back then. I don't even think I knew what a burglar was. But I knew I didn't like how it made me feel. Its arms were still outstretched, and what I thought was hair turned out to be some kind of hood, veil, or hat. Not hair at all. What stood out most was a solid, blood-red light across its chest, near where a heart would be, glowing almost as bright as the figure itself. I stared for a few seconds before diving between my parents, hiding under the covers until I fell asleep. I never saw anything else in that house, and my family didn't experience anything either. About a year later, I started kindergarten at a new school. My parents sold that house, and we moved to another one a few miles away. It was a nice house, big enough for a family of 4, with a huge backyard and a small chain-link fence. Beyond the backyard was a forest with tall trees, and when it rained, a creek would swell and flow through it. The house sat in the middle of a cul-de-sac with great neighbors. At first glance, it was beautiful, but the reality was far more terrifying. Let me add this. Talking to my family, the whole cul-de-sac fell off. About a mile down the street was a small ballpark with a thick forest behind it. My sister said she and her friends found old grave markers there. I don't know if it's true, but San Antonio's an old city with scattered, unincorporated grave sites. Plus, people seem to move in and out of the area a lot. It just felt creepy. As for the house, little things started happening. Stuff would go missing, just like in Maryland. I remember my mom joking about the gremlins following us. It was like that for the first year. Nothing major. But as time went on, things got intense. My sister, who'd been vocal about something being wrong with the house since week 1, had it worst. One night, my mom, my sister, and I were watching TV. It must have been early because I was still awake. My sister, the typical teenager with a phone, glued to her ear, was in the kitchen. I was playing with my toys on the carpet, and my mom was on the couch behind me. The house was quiet and dark, just a small lamp on in the living room. My sister stood in the pitch-black kitchen. My dad was either on his way home or staying at the base, which he sometimes did. The house layout was like this. From the front door, you entered the living room. To the right was an opening to a hallway. Straight ahead was my room, left was my sister's room, and right was my parents' room. Across from the living room, past the front door, was the kitchen, with a solid glass sliding door and a wooden door to the garage on the left. My sister was by the bar, where the phone was plugged into the wall, right next to the sliding door. Suddenly, she screamed at the top of her lungs. She saw a man's silhouette on the other side of the glass, lit by the moonlight. She said that even after she screamed, he just kept staring. No facial features, just a shadow. She ran to my mom, who scooped her up. My mom turned off the TV and the living room light, plunging us into darkness blacker than night. They both kept watching the figure, which they said never moved. I don't remember seeing it, but I recall my mom holding me tight against her chest. Our neighbors to the left, if you were facing the street, heard my sister scream and came running. They knew her from school and were outside at the time. One guy ran to our front door to check on us, while the other two jumped the fence into the backyard. I don't remember much of this, so I asked my mom later. She said she ran to the door when she heard my sister's friend banging on it, asking if we were okay. She opened it, and he grabbed me and my mom and pulled us outside. My sister followed, and by then, the silhouette was gone. My mom called the police, who arrived minutes later. They took statements and investigated, but found nothing, no sign of a burglar. My mom and sister told me years later that the two guys who ran into the backyard saw nothing, even though they jumped the fence within seconds and had a clear view. My mom and sister were staring at the figure when the guys leapt over, only breaking their gaze when the door was pounded on. If it was a burglar, there's a problem. He'd have had to sprint an eighth of a mile in the dark and clear the fence in under a second to vanish like that. Plus, it was early enough that people were awake. He'd have seen us in the house and heard my sister's friends nearby. Robbing us without being noticed would have been near impossible. To this day, neither my mom nor my sister thinks it was a robber. Sometime later, I got really sick with the flu. I missed school for a while. Fever, feeling awful. The doctor said to rest, which was tough, but I tried. I was in first grade, and being a sick first grader sucks, especially when you're told you can't play. I hated it. I slept in my parents' bed during this time, and one night, something bizarre happened, something only I experienced. My dad must have been at the base again. I was burning up, tossing and turning, crying from the pain in my arms and legs. I don't know the time, but it was late. My mom was in a deep sleep. Their room had two windows, one facing the neighbors to the left, the other facing the street. I was on the left side of bed, closer to the neighbor's window, when I saw a shadow beam across the bed from that window. I can still describe it perfectly, even though it was over 20 years ago. It was a man wearing what looked like a Dick Tracy outfit, a cowboy-style hat, and a coat with a collar popped up. The weirdest part? When I turned to look at him, he'd move back out of sight. When I turned away, he'd creep forward and I'd see his shadow again. He'd even shift to the other side of the window if he'd gone too far right. It was the strangest damn thing. I wasn't scared. I wanted my mom to see it. I woke her up, told her, and she bolted upright, terrified. She checked outside and inside, nothing. She said it was my imagination. I wish my dad had been there. He'd have believed me. It only happened that night, and no one else ever saw him. I never saw him directly, just a shadow. He taunted me all night, pacing across the window, stopping, moving back and forth, over and over. I must have looked at that window 100 times, trying to catch him clearly, but I never did. Eventually, I fell asleep. For years, I told people about it, and no one knew what to say. Answers ranged from a ghost to me hallucinating from being sick. In my 20s, I randomly remembered it and Googled black shadow with a hat out of curiosity. What came up made my hair stand on end. It returned something called a Hatman. Dozens of similar stories about a figure slipping in and out of sight, never fully revealing itself. Even scarier, there were drawings people had made. My chest tightened so much I couldn't swallow. I had no idea others had experiences so close to mine. Why me? Was it because I was sick? Because I was young? I researched as much as I could, but it left me with more questions than answers. People had written whole websites about this thing. Some said the Hatman was malevolent, linked to family issues, aggression, or premonitions. Nothing like that was happening to me. We were a happy family, even in a haunted house. I never felt anything evil from it, just that it was there. I called my parents and sent them what I found. My mom said something that jogged a memory I'd try to bury. She mentioned the Hatman might be a premonition, then said, "I wonder if he was there for Michelle." This next part is heartbreaking. It was a terrible time for us all. Our neighbors to the right, if you were facing the street, were amazing. The dad was a Vietnam vet like my dad, a Marine. They got along great. He was an incredible guy. He bought me Final Fantasy. So of course I loved him. His wife was just as awesome. From Sweden, beautiful. Their daughter was an angel, gorgeous, kind, amazing. But something horrific happened one night that still brings tears to my eyes. She was about my sister's age, maybe a bit older, and had been dating an abusive guy. One night, during a date, he brutally murdered her in the woods on the outskirts of San Antonio. I was too young to attend the funeral and didn't fully grasp death. All I knew was she couldn't come over to say hi anymore. I'm 30 now and I still miss her. I'm tearing up just thinking about it. Evil never rests. He apparently smashed her beautiful face so badly that makeup couldn't hide the bruises. Sometime after she was buried, my mom was cleaning her in my dad's bedroom, under the bed, when she saw a pair of legs. She thought it was my sister at first, but something told her it wasn't. She stood up slowly and saw her, our neighbor Michelle. She'd come to say goodbye to my mom. I remember coming inside from playing, and my mom was crying. She said Michelle had been there and had gone to rest. I wish I'd been inside to see her one last time. My mom doesn't like talking about it. She loved Michelle, we all did, but she found comfort knowing Michelle was at peace. That was the only benevolent event in that house, but it was the exception, not the rule. As time went on, more happened. Things went missing, constant bumps and thumps at night, shadows darting across the house. My sister once woke up feeling someone sitting or lying on her, pinning her down. Other times, she felt eyes on her whenever she entered her room. I knew better than to go in there. I'd had my own experiences. I never told anyone this because it was my first real encounter with something I knew wanted to hurt me. You don't forget that, but you tried to. I was running around the house. My sister was out. My dad was fixing something in the garage. My mom was at work. It must have been summer since I wasn't in school. I went inside from the garage to grab my favorite toy, Jonathan the Duck, given to me by the doctor who delivered me. I took him everywhere. He was my charm, my luck, my protection. The hallway from the kitchen was L-shaped. From the kitchen, you entered the hall. The bathrooms to the left, my sister's room is straight ahead, and around the L, my room's on the left. My sister's door was closed. I ran to my room, grabbed Jonathan, and headed back down the L toward the garage. But her door was open now. I felt this urge to look behind me, and I saw something that scared the shit out of me. A tall, black silhouette of man, no features, no clothes, just pure black. His face was a blur. No eyes or anything I could make out, just a darker patch where a mouth might have been, like it was open. He was holding the door handle from inside her room, looking at me, slowly tilting his head to the right, like he was curious or sizing me up. I held Jonathan up in front of me like a shield. He straightened his head and slowly closed the door. I ran to my dad and stuck by him the rest of the day. By then, in second grade, I knew what ghosts were. They were part of life for me. A few months later, we were about to move again. My dad had been hired by U.S. Customs Service, and we'd leave before third grade started. During this time, my uncle visited. Uncle Sergio, my mom's brother. He was loving to family and friends. Terrified enemies, tall, dark-skinned, with long black hair. When he came, the house felt calm. My sister even said his presence made it bearable. He stayed about a month. The day before he left for Illinois, he told me he knew what was happening in the house and not to be afraid. He said he could see the same things my sister, and I did. "Sam," he said, "these things are everywhere. They're part of life. You just need to know how to handle them. Don't fear them." Sadly, he died in 2005 from alcoholism. I don't drink much because of that. But he was right. We left that house in 1994. I was 9, about to start 3rd grade. It was a relief to go. My sister and I still talk about those days. My mom had some harmless experiences. My dad had none. I could write a book about that house, but those were the worst. 13 years later, I'd had a few minor paranormal experiences. Nothing big, nothing at home. I started hunting them, visiting supposedly haunted places, recording audio, video, and photos. Nothing major. Eventually, I stopped. College and life were more interesting. After high school, I moved to Dallas, met a girl through college friends, and we started dating. We're opposites, but we love that about each other. One day, she wanted to take me to her parents' house to show me where she grew up. As we pulled up, I got a familiar feeling, a hard chill down my back, like something was watching me, and we hadn't even gotten out of the car. I kept it to myself, trying to brush it off, but experience told me something was wrong. Inside, she gave me the tour, a nice 2-story house. Past the front door were stairs leading up. Next to them, a long hallway to the kitchen. To the right, still by the stairs, the living room, upstairs, the bedrooms and bathroom. I was on edge, looking for something. I knew it was there and would show itself by night's end. I stayed hyper-vigilant, and she noticed. I played it off, saying I was just stunned by how good she looked in her skirt, trying to calm myself. She took me to her old bedroom, now a study. That's where I felt its strongest. Something didn't want me there in that house, let alone that room. I stayed cool but kept scanning for movement, a sound, anything in the corner of my eye. I knew what to look for, but nothing happened. We went back downstairs to the living room. She said she'd grab beers, and we'd watch TV until her parents got home. I sat on the couch, still vigilant, scanning the room. Nothing. She came back, sat next to me, put her legs on my lap. I caressed them, trying to relax, but my hands got sweaty and shaky. She noticed. "Sam, your hands are sweaty and shaking. Are you okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." As we watched TV and sipped beers, I kept rubbing her legs. Then I saw it, a reflection in the living room mirror coming from the front door by the stairs. It wasn't a person. We'd have heard someone on the stairs or opening the door. The hallway was dark, but this figure was darker. "Morgan, when are your parents getting home?" I asked calmly. She didn't know but said soon. "So no one's here, right?" "No, just us." I kept my eyes on it while talking to her. After a minute or two, I said, "Morgan, how long have you known this house was haunted?" Her legs went cold, covered in goosebumps. "Sam, what are you talking about?" she whispered, scared. I moved her legs off, stood slowly, still facing the door, blocked by the short doorway wall. I crept over and saw the shadow looking back at me. We locked gazes, dark eyes, maybe not even eyes. It had depth, mass like a person, but stood still, hands at its sides, no features, like a crash test dummy without a nose or mouth. My heart pounded, but I wasn't as scared as I expected. It was more like, "Leave us alone or do something." Morgan came up behind me, terrified, asking what I was looking at. She couldn't see it, but it was right there. She tugged my hand. I tried to stay focused, but she pulled me back. I glanced at her for a split second, and when I looked again, it was gone. She was freaked out. Instead of waiting for her parents, we left. She texted them that we'd meet them later, but we didn't. We went to my apartment. She spilled everything. As a kid, she'd seen shadows all over the house. Her religious parents hung Jesus pictures and crosses, and it calmed down but never stopped. It scared her, but nothing ever harmed her or revealed itself, except to me. She said visitors sometimes saw things too, but it had been a while. Her parents ignored it. I still wonder, why me, not her? Fast forward to 2011. Morgan and I had broken up long ago. I met another woman, got married, and had a son. My wife and I were separated, and it was New Year's. I had my son, barely 2, with me. My mom, dad, my son, and I went to Kyle, Texas, where my sister, her husband, and my niece live. My niece, 7 years younger than me, is like a little sister. We grew up close. Her friend was visiting too. It was a full house. My sister always said weird things happened there. Creaking doors, voices, nothing threatening. Having grown up with what we did, she's hypervigilant too. The house layout. From the front door, a main hallway. To the right, a smaller hall with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. My niece's room closest, the guest room further. My sister said the guest room fell off, but nothing ever happened. It got worse after she and my brother-in-law started renovating. That's where my son and I slept that night. It was an uneventful night. Fireworks, dinner great, but no ghost talk. My son went to bed early, and being so little, I didn't want to leave him alone. I also had a bad feeling about that room from my sister's stories, even if nothing had happened. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. I put him to bed, gave him chocolate milk to sleep. As I tucked him in, cuddling him, he stopped drinking, pulled the blanket over his face. Confused, I said, "Hey, buddy, what's wrong?" Patting his tummy, rubbing his head to get him to drink. I pulled the blanket off. He put it back, saying 2 words I understood completely. "Daddy scary," pointing at the window. I covered his face, grabbed my phone. Something was here and he saw it. I wasn't afraid or confused. Those things came to me as a kid, but I won't let them near my boy. I took pictures. White Herb showed up. I grabbed him, ran to my parents, told them. After decades of this, they didn't argue or dismiss it. They knew. I told my niece and sister. We all started snapping photos, recording audio and video of dozens of pictures for had anomalies. One even looked like it was pushing us back. My son, and I didn't sleep there. I kept him close all night. He's 5 now, doesn't remember it. Probably for the best. Since then, nothing's happened. Not at home, not anywhere, not yet. I hope it stays that way. I'm not psychic or sensitive. At least I don't think so. But I know ghosts and spirits are real. Some are kind, just want to be noticed or say goodbye and rest. Others want to hurt us, dominate us, make us fear them and look over our shoulders. All I can say is this. There are things out there we can't, may not, or won't ever understand. So after you check your doors, windows, closets, attics, basement, and under beds for stalkers and lunatics, know there are other things hiding in the dark. These are the pictures from the incident with my son, in order taken by me. The last one was by my niece. First, it's essential that I give you a little backstory, because the story I'm about to tell won't make any sense without it. My name is Elisa, and I live in the northern suburbs of Adelaide, a city in South Australia. I think it's also worth mentioning that I'm totally blind, and as a result, I get around with my seeing-eyed dog named Lacey. For those who might wonder how I'm typing this, I'm using the voiceover and dictation features on my iPhone. Where I live, it's pretty quiet. You don't see many people or cars out during the day. Overall, I'd say it's a nice area, and the crime rate is very low. Now, on to the actual story. This happened 2 days ago, and it was a pretty terrifying and traumatic experience. I was walking to the local shops with Lacey, my seeing-eye dog. About halfway there, I was walking along the opposite side of the local school. My 13-year-old cousin, let's call him Thomas, spotted me and started talking to me from across the street. I couldn't hear him clearly because he was on the school oval and there were a bunch of kids out there making noise. So when I heard him say run, I thought it was just some other kid talking. But then he got closer to the edge of the school property and shouted, "I'm serious, damn it, run. There's 2 dudes gaining on you." That's when I started to pick up the pace. A lot. I began running as fast as I could, my mind racing with questions about what I'd do if these guys actually attacked me. Would Lacey save me? Would she go after them? Would I have to defend myself? I've done a fair bit of self-defense training. My best friend is a national judo champion, and my dad's a black belt in karate. I was also a cross-country runner, and now do tandem cycling. So I'm pretty athletic and can run long distances without getting tired. But back to the story. I've always been taught that before taking any action, you should try to run away or draw attention first. In that moment, I made a quick decision. I'd let Lacey off her lead. She could run off. And since we both knew the area so well, I was sure she'd only go one of three places. Back home to the school or to the local shops. People would think it was odd to see a seeing-eyed dog wandering alone with her harness on. Sure enough, she bolted toward the school, and I knew Thomas would spot her and make sure help came fast. At that point, one of the guys caught up to me and said, "Whoa, you're very pretty. I like your hair." I was just looking at it in the sunlight, and how beautiful you are. He started touching my hair, and that's when my self-defense training kicked in. I grabbed his hand and twisted it hard to make him let go. But with all the adrenaline pumping through me, I completely forgot about the second guy. He grabbed me and started pulling me down to the ground. I tried every judo move I'd learned to stop it, but he was just too big and strong. My plan was to use his weight against him, but it didn't work. He pressed something cold, probably a knife, against my throat and hissed, "Shut up, you little shit. Don't scream, or you'll be in big trouble. We just want to play." I'm a pretty small girl, 155 centimeters, which is about 5 feet 2 inches, and I don't have a big build. At that moment, I was ready to give up. 2 guys against 1 small girl? The odds weren't in my favor. I won't go into all the gory details, but basically, they started going on about how they were going to have sex with me whether I liked it or not. Fortunately, right then, 4 cops, my cousin, and Lacey showed up. My dog was ready to tear strips out of them, which is unusual because she's a Labrador. They're usually calm and friendly. The 2 men were arrested, and Thomas was let out of school to calm me down and make sure I got home safely. What still makes my blood run cold is what they meant by, "We just want to play." Who knows what would have happened if Thomas hadn't been there to see them? Who knows what would have happened if the cops hadn't arrived when they did? It's something I can't even think about. I've had nightmares ever since. I live in Wyoming and work night shifts at one of the local Walgreens. Since we're kind of late-night pharmacy, we get some weird and unpleasant people fairly often, but I've been here long enough to brush it off most of the time. On this particular day, I went to clock in for my shift and noticed 2 Native American guys sitting at one of the photo kiosks, messing around with the Western Union. I thought it was odd how they seemed to be just lounging there, but I let it go and clocked in. Later, I overheard them talking to a manager, explaining that they'd have to try again later, because the money they were expecting hadn't transferred yet. Sure enough, they came back after a while. That night, I was working the register and stationed in the photo section since it was still pretty early in the evening. There was still a decent number of employees around, finishing up some work. What fell off was when one of the guys came back in. He'd only left a couple of minutes ago. It's not unusual for people to forget something, so I said hi and didn't think much of it. But then I saw him plop down at the photo kiosk again, and he started chatting up Candy. He left after a bit, and Candy came over to fill me in on what he'd said. Apparently, he'd been complimenting her body, getting real descriptive and creepy about it. I told her to tell the manager, because that's borderline harassment. She did, but not much came of it. Candy can be dramatic sometimes, but she wouldn't make up something like that. Barely a few minutes passed, and that guy waltzed back in again. He talked to Candy some more, and after he left, she came over to me again. This time, he doubled down on the creepy comments, and even said he'd love to see what she looked like drunk. I'm 22, and she's only 18. I've been working here over a year now, and I'm as protective of her as I am of my little sisters. I was pissed off. I told her to tell management again. And then I went and told several managers myself that those 2 creeps needed to be banned. Our main store manager was hesitant to call the cops, though that is until we heard those guys were outside panhandling. That was bad enough. But what really set me off was that they were only approaching young girls. Candy got scared and asked one of the managers to go outside with her so she could move her car closer to the door. And guess who was out there, lingering over by the side of the lot where her car was parked? I was damn grateful they had no idea which car was hers. She came back inside, and since I knew she had to get gas after work, I told her I'd follow her in my own car afterward to make sure she was okay. After a while, it was just me, Candy, and our closing manager. Let's call him Josh. Thankfully, Josh took all this seriously. He was talking to Candy about the situation when, right then, the other guy walked in, making a beeline for the photo counter. Candy darted behind the counter to hide, and I shot a signal to Josh while I handed a customer her change back. Normally, we'd page a code, but since Josh was right there, I tried to play it cool and act normal. He caught on quick, marched straight up to the guy, and told him he needed to leave. He made it clear that next time, there'd be no warning. They'd just call the cops. The guy practically bolted out of there, and I couldn't help but smirk. That night, Candy's boyfriend took her home, and the next day, I drove her to work. Those guys had said they were from Arizona and would be in town for a few days. So until they were gone, I stayed on guard and made sure she always had someone around. Assholes like that give all of us with native blood a bad name. I'm just so relieved my friend stayed safe and that Josh stepped up when it mattered. This happened about 5 years ago when I was a senior in high school. On this particular day, I was sitting in German class and needed to use the bathroom. I asked Frau, our teacher, and sure enough, she let me go. I decided to take my water bottle with me and fill it up at the fountain right outside the bathrooms. I filled it, set it on top of the fountain, and went inside. I'd been doing this for years, so I didn't think anything of it. But now I know better than to leave my drink unattended. I came out, grabbed my water bottle, and headed back to class. The rest of German went by without a hitch, with me chugging about half the bottle. After class, I started walking to film class, and that's when things got weird. To get from German to film, I had to go down a set of stairs and through 2 hallways. Halfway down the stairs, everything started to blur, like the images were melting together, and keeping my balance on the steps got tricky. Naturally, I started to panic. I had no clue what was happening or why everything felt so off, but the panic eased up when my vision cleared and my balance steadied. It lasted about 3 minutes while I walked down the first hallway, but then it hit me again 10 times worse on the way down the second set of stairs. This time it was different, way stronger. Everything blurred again, but instead of just balance issues, I could barely walk. My feet felt like they weighed 10 pounds each, and even breathing was a struggle. My head was like a damn cinder block, and I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't even panic properly anymore. I started stumbling in the hall, grabbed the wall, and just kind of sank down. Lucky for me, one of the guys from my film class saw me and came over. He asked what was going on, which was pretty pointless since I couldn't talk. But I think he figured out something was seriously wrong. He helped me up and half carried me to the nurse when it was clear walking was a slog but doable. I'll never be able to thank him enough for that. He saved me from who knows what that day. The nurse called the ER right away, and they ran some blood tests. Turns out I'd been drugged, roofied, they said, right there in school. My dad, this tough Southern European guy who's got a soft spot for his daughters, was beyond pissed. He demanded the school check the security cameras from that day. I watched them with him the next day and was totally thrown off by what I saw. The only time I'd filled my water bottle that day was during German, and the camera showed it sitting there untouched. No one even walked by while I was in the bathroom. That freaked me out because if I didn't get drugged between the bathroom trip and the passing period between German and film, it had to have happened inside German class. There were no cameras in the classrooms to prove it, but there was no other time it could have gone down. I thought back on it, and the only moment I left my desk unattended in that class was when I got up to ask Frau a question. That took maybe 5 minutes. And in that window, someone grabbed my water bottle, spiked it, and put it back without me noticing. The thing is, my German class was huge, so someone had to have seen it happen, and they didn't do a damn thing. If they did, they'd have just let whatever was supposed to happen to me play out. I don't know what the person who drugged me wanted, and I don't ever want to know. I'm way less trusting of people now, and believe me, I never leave my drink unattended anymore. Neither should you. There are some sick bastards out there, and you don't know what they might pull. This story is a bit different because in this one, I was a thief, or at least I was going to be. Someone terrifying stopped me from pulling it off. It all started a few years ago on my birthday when I turned 16. All my friends were older than me and already had cars, so I was always stuck riding the back seat whenever we went anywhere. But now that I was 16, I could finally change that. The problem was, I didn't have the cash for a car. There weren't any jobs for a 16-year-old kid around, so I decided I'd steal the money instead. The house I planned to hit was right next to ours. A man, a woman, and their little girl, about 5 years old, lived there. I got lucky because it turned out the parents were leaving town for a week, and had called a babysitter to watch the kid. I spent weeks holed up in my room, mapping out how I'd do it. When the day finally came, I waited until it was late enough that no one would spot me. By 11 p.m., it felt like the perfect time to move. Their door was a piece of cake to unlock. I was inside in no time. The house was dead quiet and pitch dark. They had a ton of jewelry lying around. So I opened the bag on my back and started grabbing anything that looked expensive. The place had 2 floors, and the bedrooms were upstairs. I knew that because I've been over there plenty of times. I figured the real cash would be in the parents' room, but to get there, I'd have to sneak past the kids' room and the guest room where the babysitter was without waking anyone up. As I crept up the stairs, I heard singing coming from the girls' room. I figured she would just play with her dolls and would crash out soon, so I kept going. I slipped past the rooms and made it to the parents' bedroom. Lucky me, I found a hidden drawer. I popped it open, and jackpot, jewelry, cash, a whole stash of stuff. I took everything I could fit, moving slow and quiet as hell. The last thing I wanted was to wake the babysitter. On my way back to the hall, I could still hear that singing. Same melody, same lyrics, like it was on a damn loop. I'll point out it was midnight by then. I want to get out of there, but curiosity got the better of me. I slowly cracked open the girl's door. She was sitting on the carpet, staring right at me. Our eyes locked, and it was like I couldn't look away even if I tried. Then she stopped singing, and the word she said next I'll never forget. "Hello, friend. Are you here to play with me?" Her voice was so quiet, flat, no emotion at all. After she said it, she grinned, a huge, creepy smile that stretched way too wide. It scared the hell out of me. I bolted out of there, leaving the backpack behind, and ran like a bat out of hell. No one ever found out about that night, but I'm still too freaked out to step foot in that house again. Who was that girl? I don't know, and I don't think I wanna. Let me start by saying this isn't my story. It's my mom's. I recently took sociology as an elective at school, and we were talking about serial killers, debating whether they're born that way or shaped by their environment. One thing led to another, and the class discussion shifted to the infamous Moors murderers, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. They operated in the greater Manchester area, where my family's lived for generations back in the 60s. They mostly killed kids and teenagers, dumping their bodies on Saddleworth Moor, hence the name. Myra Hindley's often called the most evil woman in history. I'm a bit of an oddball, I guess. Yeah, all this stuff was awful, but it weirdly fascinated me. Maybe it's like how people slowed down to gawk at a car crash or watch horror movies. Anyway, I got home from school and went through the usual "how was your day?" routine with my mom. I told her about my classes, we had dinner, and eventually I brought up the notorious duo. At first, she went quiet for a bit. Then she hit me with it. "I used to know Myra Hindley." I was floored. I couldn't believe it first, So I laughed it off, thinking she was joking. But then she turned to me, dead serious, and said, "No, really, I knew Myra Hindley." Her tone and the way she gets about stuff like this made it sink in. She wasn't kidding. Naturally, I asked how. My mom was born in Longsight, Manchester, in the 50s and grew up through the 60s. Kids had way more freedom back then. She said it wasn't a big deal for her to walk to the park alone at 8 years old. It was a different time, sure, but that freedom came with risks, and some paid a hell of a price for it. She'd often go to her cousin's house to play. They'd mess around with dolls, play dress up, brush each other's hair. The usual little girl stuff. Most of the time, they hung out at her cousin's place, where her aunt kept an eye on them. But on special occasions, her aunt and uncle would head out together, and they'd get a babysitter. And you guessed it, the babysitter was Myra Hindley. She was a friend of my mom's uncle's sister. A mouthful, I know, and just barely in her 20s back then. Mom remembers her as distant, hardly ever talking, just giving these impatient looks now and then. She wasn't exactly hands-on. She'd just sit in the lounge, either watching TV or quietly waiting out her shift. She didn't babysit my mom and her cousin for long, though less than a year. She got let go after she kept bringing her boyfriend, Ian Brady, around. My mom stopped visiting for a while, because even at that age, she felt uneasy around him. Something about him just seemed off, even her 8-year-old self. Even my grandma knew about Brady's criminal past. Word spread fast. Her aunt and uncle asked Myra to stop bringing him over, but she wouldn't, so they cut her loose. After that, my mom started going back. Her aunt's older son was old enough to watch them by then, and things went back to normal. Mom was glad to not feel scared or intimidated visiting anymore. About 2 or 3 years later, she and her cousin decided to hit the park one day. It was 1.5 miles away, so they grabbed some change at the corner shop and headed out. They played on the roundabout, the slide, the swings, had a blast for a few hours. When it was time to go, they bought ice creams for the walk home. It was evening by then. Mom had just finished her ice cream when she noticed a car pull up, a classic mini pickup. And who was driving? Myra Hindley. She turned, locked eyes with my mom and her cousin, and just stared them down for a solid few seconds. Mom says she felt totally confused. Understandable, right? She'd seen Myra around town every now and then after the babysitting gig, but never spoke to her. Honestly, she barely remembers her voice since they'd hardly talked back then. This was the first real face-to-face since. After staring, Myra just drove off without a word. That same night, 12-year-old Keith Bennett was snatched and killed by the two in the exact same way. Myra pulled up, lured him into the car, and they took him to the moors. Mom counts herself damn lucky to this day. Brady was in the back seat that night. Did Myra pass him up because Mom was with her cousin and not alone? Because she recognized her? Or something else? Mom will never know. When Brady and Hindley got arrested a year or so later, Mom was too young to really get it. But as she got older, she'd think back on what could have happened. Myra died of a chest infection in 2002. Brady's still alive, the longest-serving prisoner in England and Wales now. If you want to dig into the murders, a quick Google search will fill you in. Knowing what could have been, I find all pretty damn distressing now. And so does my mom. I wanted to share this because it's a perfect example of how fragile life is. One tiny choice can rewrite everything. If whatever clicked in Myra's head that day hadn't stopped her, I wouldn't be here today. First off, my apologies for how long this is going to be. This story spans over 30-odd years, so please bear with me. It might seem hard to believe, almost impossible even, and probably a lot different from what you're used to, though it may be tough to swallow. I assure you every word is true. I'm submitting this under a proxy to protect my identity because even today, I'd be in danger if I revealed who I am. But people need to know. Back in 1983, I was serving in the British Royal Air Force. I'd been working there for 15 years, and if I do say so myself, had an outstanding record. I can't say much about where I was or what I was doing, but I was based in England. One day, I got a call from a friend. He sounded off and told me there were some people waiting to see me. When I got there, 3 men were sitting at a desk. They searched me, which I found strange, then showed me an ID card with a NATO symbol on it. They said they had a job opportunity for me, to join a secret task force. My operations would be classified, my regular hours reduced to 0, but for 9 months of the year, day or night, I could be called into action. I was intrigued and told them so. I expected paperwork, but they just stood up and said, "Come with us." We boarded a jet black helicopter and flew for about an hour. When we landed, it was pitch black. Looked like they dropped me in the middle of a farm. We walked onto a concrete platform, and the guy who'd been doing the talking pulled out a radio, said something, and the platform started descending. When it stopped, there was a long corridor with a metal door at the end. They asked me to turn away while they unlocked it. No keypad or anything, just a solid door. Inside, it reminded me of NASA mission control. Screens everywhere, about 100 people in suits working at desks. They took me to an interview room and started explaining the job. The men looked at me as we sat down and said, "I'm going to tell you a bit about what you'll be doing. You can ask questions, but I might not answer them all. Understand?" "Yes," I said, starting to feel uneasy. The place felt wrong. I had no clue where in the UK I was. And the guy talking had an American accent. "Your job, if you choose to work for us, will be to secure locations with little notice, waiting for our NATO cleanup team to arrive." "What exactly are we securing?" I asked, thinking maybe rogue terrorists. "All I can say is experimental technology we can't let fall into enemy hands." "Which enemy?" I pressed, thinking it was a simple question. He didn't answer, just shared a look with the others before continuing. "You'll find the pay generous and the hours flexible, but when called, you must respond immediately. We can only give about 45 minutes warning, and you'll need to join your team and fly to the location." I was interested. I've always loved a challenge. "Secrecy is paramount," he went on. "Your silence will be rewarded. Any breach of trust will be dealt with severely. You'll see the sensitive nature of this work as you go, and I can't stress enough how vital it is, for your own safety, that you keep a cool head and stay quiet." Out of curiosity, I asked, "What's the punishment for breaking that secrecy?" "Expecting prison. I can't give specifics, but you wouldn't be seen again." The rest of the interview covered my training and skills, and in the end, I agreed. They gave me keys to a nice apartment in the city, a fancy new car, and for the first 2 months, I was paid a ton to sit around watching sports. Then one night, at about 2:30 a.m., an alarm woke me up, a call to arms. I threw on my uniform and was out the door in 5 minutes. I headed to the base of operations. I'd love to say where it is, but more than one person has died digging into it. So for now, I'll just say it's very close to Wales. When I got there, I met my team, a great bunch of lads. I was shocked to see one with a nasty injury to his jaw, burned and patched up, a chunk of flesh gone. But aside from that, he was a solid guy. They told me to brace myself. We got radio to location and took off in that same black helicopter. It was Sherwood Forest. We arrived within 45 minutes, but couldn't land in the trees. I wanted to know what we were looking for, but they just said, "You'll know when you see it." Over the forest, I saw a tree on fire and smaller flames scattered around. We landed outside and secured the area, with strict orders not to touch anything. I'd been told it was experimental stuff, but what I saw next is burned into my mind. It's why I'm telling this story. A man and a woman were lying on the ground, both with calm expressions, both dead in a horrific way. The man's genitals were gone, cut off precisely, smooth slices. His left side was slit open, his chest cavity hollow. I thought he'd starved, but later I learned his organs were removed and never found. His body was completely hairless. No hair, eyebrows, eyelashes, nothing. The woman was the same, but worse. Genitals gone, breasts too, tongue missing, one eye, organs, and, as I'd see later, about 12 inches of her anal cavity removed somehow. I'd flown helicopters and pointed guns, but I'm not ashamed to say I threw up everywhere. That, more than anything, bonded me with my team. They pulled me aside and said, "We get this all the time. You won't like it when you find out what's really going on." Who are they? Who did this? I asked, trying not to puke again. A couple went missing about a month ago. We expected them to turn up like this. As for who did it, you won't believe it till you see it. Just think of them as the enemy. 20 minutes later, a cleanup team arrived, and we were told to leave. On the way back, I asked what happened to them. One guy just said, "Experiments," and that was it. I didn't want to know more. For 3 weeks, I sat at home wondering what the hell I'd signed up for. I finally called a teammate to talk. He said they got cases like this every 3 months, and not to worry. We were doing all we could to stop it. Who's the enemy? I asked again. He flat out said, "We don't know. We don't know who they are, what they want, or where they're from. All we know is they're not from Earth, and their tech is way beyond ours." I told him to shove off, but deep down, it made sense. After what I'd seen, little green men actually seemed plausible. What about the families of that man and woman? I asked. "Nothing," he said. "They'll stay on the missing persons list forever." I wanted to ask how many had died, but I was too scared of the answer. That was it for me. People had to know. Families out there were searching for loved ones, never knowing, never grieving. I asked if he thought it was right. "No," he said. He and the others have been collecting evidence for 6 months, trying to figure out how to go public. They used little cameras to snap crime scene photos before the cleanup team arrived, but had stopped the last time, unsure if they could trust me. I told them I'd help, and we started brainstorming. A month later, the alarm went off again. I didn't want to go, but I did. This time, it was a wreckage in a field near Lincolnshire. Bits of metal everywhere. A single male body on the ground, torn to pieces but arranged in a human shape. Whoever did it didn't know left from right. The arms were swapped. His mouth kept opening and snapping shut. I'd later learn an electrical implant in his brain was shocking him post-mortem, causing it. Damn, it was eerie. I started taking pictures with a cheap Kodak. One teammate touched some metal that day and got a nasty burn. We were given tablets to take daily for 2 weeks, told not to tell anyone. They made my stomach churn like a 2-week self-inflicted sickness. After developing the photos, I wonder how to get them out there. I couldn't just call a newspaper and say, "Hey, I got pics of mangled corpses for your front page." Then one day, while walking my dog in the countryside, I saw a lemonade sign. "Seen strange lights in the sky?" I'm an independent journalist looking for UFO or alien encounter stories. All info handled with confidence. Call me. I thought, hell, it's a long shot, but maybe he'd know what to do. Let's call him Derek. And Derek, if you're reading this, I'm truly sorry for what happened. I called and said I had photos to show him, but not over the phone. We met at a motorway lay-by. He pulled up with his wife and kids, who got out to give us privacy. I told him about my job. He seemed interested at first. When I asked if he wanted to see the pictures, he said yes, but all the color drained from his face when he saw them. A Welshman, he kept saying, "Oh my gosh." We agreed to meet again, somewhere else, and he'd dig around. Little did I know, he thought I was a psycho killer. After making copies at a shop, he took the photos straight to the police. He later told me the officer took my story and the pictures, then left that night to round up others to arrest me. Derek checked the station the next morning, hoping I had been nabbed, only to find the officer on holiday. A new guy, not in uniform, told him it was an elaborate prank. The images were fake but kept as a precaution. Derek let slip he had copies, and the officer demanded them all, saying they could upset people not in on the joke. Derek agreed but never handed them over. When we met again, he was a wreck. He'd been getting calls from someone claiming to be a reporter, pressing for his story. When he refused, the guy threatened him. Then his wife got late-night calls threatening her. It all peaked when his home and office burned down in a suspected arson attack. Some guy posing as a meter reader likely planted something. His wife left him, took their kid, and Derek, a man who just wanted a story about weird lights, was left broken. I told him to drop me and the story for his own safety. After that, a senior officer joined us on every call-out, and we couldn't take more pictures. Out of fear, my mates and I destroyed most of the evidence. I've got some photos left, but they'll only come out when I pass. To protect my family. I'd seen how far they'd go to keep this quiet, and I didn't like it. From then on, I just did the job. Over the next 10 years, I saw incredible things, hardly believable stuff. Alien bodies, not like on TV. We call them demons. They looked like they could rip you apart, without blinking. Orders were clear. Stay away from anything alive and report immediately. I hate to admit it, but I got used to the drill. I didn't like seeing dead people or crashes, but it became routine. Some call-outs were mutilated animals. Once, 36 sheep corpses dumped, some with metal wire to their jaws, others missing organs. There were bad times too. Once, we found a woman struggling to breathe, too injured to save, even by the best doctors. I doubt they'd have let her live anyway. Another time, on a country road in England, 9 human bodies were lined up, all mutilated. I thought it had hit the news, but nothing. In the 1990s, I won't say exactly when I retired. My health was shot from what I'd been exposed to. One nasty incident was a bright flash that left me and my team puking, then in hospital with acute liver failure. We recovered, but now only 2 of us are left. Retired. We're well cared for, top-notch health care, which we need. It's no coincidence everyone on my team has had cancer at least twice. I've had it 3 times, got benign tumors everywhere, and can't walk properly anymore. I've got a nice home and a loving family. I never talk about my job, but this story needs to be out there. There's a team in the UK with some kind of early warning for UFO activity. Sometimes it's like we shot them down. Other times they just drop stuff off. Never a false alarm. I've racked my brain wondering how we got 45 minutes notice before a UFO lands or crashes. I feel for the missing people, never seen again. It's a NATO gig, but America pulls the strings. We knew there were other teams across Europe. I've been called to France and the Netherlands, but never America. They had their own setup. In 2010, Derek started talking to an independent researcher who later tracked me down. I trust him to get this out there. He's made a 2-hour documentary. Search UFO NATO on YouTube. Fair warning, you'll need a strong stomach. That was my job for most of my adult life. Well paid to keep quiet, and I reaped the rewards. But I never agreed with it. As a soldier, I followed orders, not questioning why. I'd seen the cost of stepping out of line, and my life was too valuable to waste failing at this. The media is controlled by the same people who ran me. The only way this becomes common knowledge is if ordinary folks tell it, knowing it's true. If enough do, the floodgates will open, and this dark secret will finally come out.